Welcome back to Ring of Fire. I'm Mike Papantonio. The gap between the haves and the have-nots continues to grow at an alarming rate. And as a result, our country's creeping closer and closer to becoming a full-blown plutocracy. Joining me now to talk about this are attorneys Joe Cochette and Howard Nations. Plutocracy, you know, we hear the term all the time, but people simply don't understand that we think of ourselves as a democracy. We want to argue that we're a democracy, but when you really analyze what's happening to America right now, if you believe that a plutocracy is simple, it is ruled by the wealthy, ruled by the rich to the detriment of everybody else. Howard, is it a fair analysis of what's happening in America today?
It's a completely fair analysis, Mike, because if you look at the last two generations, the 40 years since 1973, the gross income distribution has been upward to 80% of the national wealth has gone to the upper 2% during that two generations, and 65% of the wealth has gone to the upper 1%. We heard a lot about the upper 1% in the last election. 65% of the income has gone to them. At the same time, salaried workers have had a 20 to 28% rise in real income in that same 40-year period. Now, that does not reflect what's happened in the country. In the country, the gross domestic product in that same time frame is up 110%, but the wealth from that gross domestic product increase obviously migrated to the top. But the most shocking statistic of all that supports this whole idea is that from 2000 to 2012, the real net worth of 90% of Americans has declined by 25%.
Joe,
that's outrageous.
It's incredible. Joe, let me ask you, part of it, we like to say, well, this is just a Republican problem, but if you look at the cycle from 1973, we've had a predatory extraction from money from our system that has been where Democrats have participated just as aggressively where it comes to moving that money. And if you look at the term plutocracy, it is where you have influence of the wealthy to the detriment of kind of the have-nots of the society. What's your take on it, beginning with the Clinton era, for example? Clinton was no fan of real democracy.
Well, regardless of what fan he was, one thing is absolutely clear, that Wall Street dominates this country, and it's Washington's problem. Let me give you one example real quick. Carnival Lines, that takes hundreds of millions of dollars out of the United States, pays less than 1% in taxes because they register all their ships in Panama. Yesterday or last week or whenever, because of their problems recently, the United States government asked them to just pay back a little bit of money for what we as taxpayers spent in the Gulf with their latest catastrophe. They told us in very polite words they weren't going to pay a dime. How about all the hedge fund managers that made, if you can believe this, and along with Howard's statistics, they just released hedge fund managers' salaries. 20 to 25 million was the lowest, with the top 10 making anywhere from 2 to 4 billion, B with a B, billion. And they get taxed on a rate which is not what you and I and everyone else that's looking at this pay. They get paid on capital gains. So really what this is a Washington problem. And you're absolutely right. It has nothing to do with political registration. The Democrats are just as problematic as the Republican Party for their failure to take on corporate America.
Howard, isn't part of the problem that when you put wealth up in the 1% or the 2%, the net effect, the domino effect is they control the politics, they control the regulations, they control virtually every part of they control the media, they control every part of our society to where a plutocracy, a true plutocracy, that is where it is ruled by the wealthy, who has the most money, where it's the golden rule is the person with the most gold makes all the rules. Isn't that kind of how plutocracy works? And how can you possibly deny that that's not existing in this country today?
Well, it's certainly existing in the country today. You know, we heard the term too big to fail, in 2008. Now we have a new term that just came out of Eric Holder, out of the Justice Department. He just said that it is not a question of violations by Wall Street. It's a question of economic stability. What would it do to the economic stability of the country if we prosecuted Wall Street for all the wrongs they did and for the trillions of dollars that they stole? In other words, he's saying they're just too big to prosecute.
Too big to jail.
Let's look back. The only prosecutions they've had successfully, Martha Stewart. Wow. And you know, even Bernie Madoff was not prosecuted until he turned himself in.
Well, that
it's
is,
ridiculous.
Joe, it is because there is a double standard here. When you try a case, and you've tried some of the biggest cases in America, both of you guys have, and one thing I think you always teach people about trying cases, who does this person on trial surround himself with? Because that's going to have a big impact on what is conveyed with that witness or that defendant. Who do they surround themselves with? Well, I'd love to bring you good news, and I'd love to say, well, Obama has surrounded himself with people who are different than Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, you might remember, surrounded himself with people like Robert Rubin and Paulson and Geithner and Summers, who rewrote the regulations of Wall Street so Wall Street could steal from the American public. But now, Joe, we have a president who thinks that Jamie Dimon is a damn hero. Doesn't that scare the hell out of you? And
it should scare the hell out of, to use your phrase, the hell out of everybody in America. It's not just, you said they changed the regulations. They did away with regulations. They deregulated under Bob Rubin, who, by the way, went on, as you know, to become an executive with Citicorp and made hundreds of millions of dollars thereafter. Again, it is just, we have to get back to Main Street and somehow make them aware, the people on Main Street, as to what's going on in Washington these days. And the only way we can do that is through the political enterprise. Until we change the way that money can buy politicians, money is going to dominate exactly how they vote in Washington. I don't care, Republican, Democrat. If you're a Republican and Democrat and you're going to vote against X, you're going to get defeated by big money. The Koch brothers are going to come in, put money in your district, and defeat you in a primary. It is money ruling money, and Citizens United, the case that everybody knows about, that now allows unlimited contributions to any politician, is more destructive than any decision we have ever had come out of the Supreme Court.
But Howard, isn't part of plutocracy, if you take a look at true plutocracy, what actually happens is, even if you have a politician come into the system and they may talk like a populist, like we used to hear Obama talk, you know, we actually thought he was a populist. Just like we thought Bill Clinton was a populist. And then all of a sudden, if you look at all the data on what happens in a true plutocracy, it is that those leaders become co-opted by Wall Street and corporate America and media America, corporate media. They become co-opted almost immediately. Isn't that what we've seen happen with both Bill Clinton and Obama, these characters that we thought, oh yes, these are our people, they're going to be great for the average American. They have been horrendous for the American public.
Well, when you have government of the rich, by the rich, for the rich, that's exactly what happens even to the strongest leader in the world, the President of the United States. And we've seen it here. We've seen Clinton come in with all of his best intentions. We've seen Obama come in with all of his best intentions, and we've seen the same thing happen to both of them. They get wrapped up, and the people they appoint around them, like Eric Holder, for example, who recently said, Bank of America, the whole mortgage lender, you talk about getting the American public involved, how about the whole mortgage crisis? The rip-offs, the forgeries on the foreclosures, and despite all that criminality, Obama's Attorney General recently said that Bank of America basically has a free pass on that one. Again, they're just too big to prosecute.
Joe, when you say we have to get the word out, it's not likely we will get the word out when you figure that part of a true plutocracy also controls the media. And that's what we hear. For us to be so naive as to believe that NBC doesn't do the bidding of Comcast or General Electric, or that Viacom doesn't tell ABC what to do. We understand that. And aren't we in a situation to where the think tanks in the media actually promote the concept of plutocracy, and that is to say money held up by 1% or 2% of the American public is also really good for us? Isn't that part of the message there that we get from corporate media?
Well, you're right, but I have great hope for change, and let me tell you where that change is coming. That change, I think, is coming in social media, because today the big networks are struggling, even though they're owned by Wall Street. They're struggling in the face of young people who have the opportunity to use social media to their benefit. Now, social media is the way. I'm using social media. You know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the internet. That's the way today that we can communicate with hundreds of thousands and thousands of people. The sad fact is print media is going under. Nobody reads newspapers anymore. But the youth of our country have an opportunity now to speak to each other and stop, I hope, the nonsense from what's going on. I want to go back and make one comment on something Howard just said. Howard was so right when he said that Bill Clinton and Obama came into Washington very well intended. I, for a moment, believe everything they said when they ran for public office. It was when they got to that office in Washington that they were surrounded by the process that did not allow them to operate. Hopefully today, with a new media ability, that is to say, shows like you're doing right now, that kids, young people, they're our leaders of tomorrow. If they can get that message out, look what it did. I don't want to go off on the Arab Spring, but look what it did in the Middle East.
Well, look, Howard, let me just tell you, I'd love to think that that both Obama and Clinton came in with the right idea. But here I have the last quote by Obama about Jamie Dimon, who, of course, is one of the key thugs to the burn down of our economy, said that he thought Lloyd Blankenfein and Jamie Dimon were savvy, successful businessmen. That's Obama's take on what's happening on Wall Street. 30 seconds or less. Give me your reaction to that.
Well, the reaction is that they are savvy businessmen. They understand plutocracy. They understand how to work the system. So he's absolutely correct. How much more savvy can you be than Jamie Dimon right now? And with all the problems that they have in Washington, Wall Street is flourishing, and
yes,
Jamie Dimon is one of the leaders of Wall Street flourishing.
Plutocracy is alive in America. We have to preserve democracy by being aware of that. Thank you, gentlemen.